The following program contains graphic material, including offensive language. Viewer discretion is advised.
Science fiction, the great teacher, the great inspiration. It helps us see the endless possibilities of life. So let's be inspired together.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's on the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We are not sending out interceptors. We have taken them completely by surprise.
Hey everybody, it's Jeff. Well, hope everybody's staying cool. It's very hot here today, very hot. Muggy on top of it, which makes it even worse. And there is no breeze, it's actually dead air. So it's terrible. And I felt I had to come outside to do this video today because, whenever it's hot, a hot day, and then the day gets, in the evening and the air start, the cool down, it's still hot inside of your apartment because it's still holding on to whatever the temperature was during the afternoon. Even when you have the air conditioner running, it doesn't really change a whole lot. But when you step outside, you get fresh air and, it's a little cooler, a little more comfortable. And that's why I came out today, because I had just got done eating. I cooked some stuff and then I just ugh, it's hot, now I'm gonna go out. So I figured I'd do this little video here today outside. And of course, I'm at the Bangor Park here. As you can see, there's the fountain that's running. And I wish I could time it so I can come here at night, so that way you guys can see the lights flashing, into the water, so that way the water changes color. But I never get to come out here. So anyway, I noticed on Twitter that this conversation was coming up about homosexuality, bisexuality, things like that, and it was in relation to Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars. And I'm thinking, why are we talking about that? And apparently somebody had written or said some kind of thing that Obi-Wan is gay, I guess. And I'm like, well, in the Star Wars, if you watch Disney Plus, if you have it, they have a lot of Star Wars material there, right? Videos and movies and TV shows. And Obi-Wan did have an affinity for one female character, which he did mention in Star Wars Obi-Wan, just sort of offhand, to little Princess Leia. And he mentioned to her that there was somebody he admired. But then I figured, well, there's the answer to the reply to what the person was writing about on Twitter. Has actually got nothing really much to do with that, because there was something that was mentioned by Anakin in episode 2 about Jedi in general, where he said that Jedi are encouraged to love because, as a Jedi, they stay in tune with the Force, right? And the Force exists in all living things. So, in other words, if you're encouraged to love, all living things, then you're more in tune with the Force. And that makes sense to me. I mean, it's sort of like, how can I say, like a priest in the Catholic Church saying they care about everybody because Jesus did, right? And so with the Force and the people who are in tune with it, naturally they're not going to want to separate themselves from parts of the Force in order to be a true Jedi, right? So I figured, well, you know what? Here's the thing. When Obi-Wan became a Jedi, he was taken from his family at birth, okay? He's just a baby. He doesn't really have much memory of who his parents were. So that means they got him in those really beginning formative years. And as he was growing up, he was being taught by the Jedi about how to be a Jedi, right? So he was taught how to respect the Force, how to love all that it encompasses, to love all the people that it touches, and which in the Star Wars universe it touches everybody, whether you're a Jedi or not. The Force is part of you, okay? So in that respect, as they get older, when they're constantly told that as they grow up about loving all that is part of the Force, I think that after a while that starts to alter a person's perception of what sexuality is. In fact, the Jedi might even see the act of having sex as something primitive and, animalistic in a way, because to them, to express love for something doesn't even include that. That's just, if you want to have babies, this is what you do, okay? But, Jedi don't have children, okay? They're not supposed to anyway. And so if they love a woman, they can love a man equally. They can love all men equally. They can love all women equally, okay? Like brothers and sisters, or even maybe a different level of love. So a Jedi is more than just walking around with a lightsaber and wearing fancy robes, okay? It's a way of life, okay? It's a calling. It's being something that's above what the rest of us view as being male or female, love and hate and stuff like that. They are a much more centered kind of living people, you know what I'm saying? And therefore prejudice is something that they really wouldn't see much of at all. Now, why Anakin turned out the way he did? Well, that's because, like Yoda said, he was too old to be taken in as a Padawan to be trained, because at the age he was taken, which I believe was 9 or 10 years old, he was already forming relationships. First with his mother, which he loved a lot, okay, and with Watto, which he, kind of liked, but at times didn't like, and eventually with Padme, whom he fell in love with. So his perceptions of love and hate were already there when they got him, and they had to undo that, which is harder to do because as you're growing up, you're already setting your ways. And they should have got Anakin when he was a baby. That would have been a lot more easier, but like I said in a previous video about that, the Force had that set that way, that he would be found at a later time where his weakness would be exploited by Palpatine and the Sith. So, but that's beside the point. The thing is this is the reason why Anakin had such a hard time identifying with the Jedi Council, is because he didn't understand where they were coming from. He didn't understand why they were putting these barriers in front of him. And I don't think he ever really understood that throughout his existence. Even as Darth Vader, he didn't understand it, okay? Because all he knew was really the Sith way and the conflicting ways of the Jedi, which he, during the war became even more hypocritical to him because he didn't understand why they were doing the things they were doing. So I think that it only made things worse for him as a Padawan to try and understand Obi-Wan and understand Yoda and all the others. It's just blinded him to why some of them didn't trust him as much. Okay, and unfortunately, when he was master to Osaka Tano, his, what can I say, his traits came through loud and clear, and it might have been beneficial to Osaka because Ashoka, or whatever, I can't remember how you say, it might have been a benefit to Ashoka, but because it gave her the will to be able to understand when she wasn't being treated fairly by the Jedi Council, and that caused her to leave at the time that she did. The Force wanted it that way, for a purpose that was beyond being a Jedi in the Council. So, I think that, how could I say, I think that Obi-Wan, you can't really say that he's gay or not, homosexual or not, you know what I'm saying? I think he's just, what do you call a person that loves everybody equally? What's the word for that? Okay? And if he finds himself getting more attached to one than others, then he has to step back from that. Okay? He has to beware that he doesn't get too attached to one thing over another, because that's unfair. So how do you, what word would you use to describe that mentality? Because whatever that is, it's not, you can't label it the way we label things, LGBTQ or whatever, okay? It's not any of that. It's something completely different. And that's what makes, the issue about whether he's homosexual or not kind of ridiculous, because that's not the way Jedi work, okay? It has nothing to do with that, about a preference, okay? It does work for somebody like Anakin, who still clung to that because of his attachment to Padme, which was a constant holdback to him, which he couldn't break, So, like I said, that was big part of the reason why he fell to the dark side, was because of that attachment to her, which once that happened and Padme gave birth to the twins, there was no further use of her, and she died. Whether or not the Force caused that or not, I don't know. But her destiny was already fulfilled at that point, and that's why I think she died, was because, so I think that that's my reaction to it, my response to it. So let me go to a commercial break, come back and talk about the Sith side of that same issue.
Little cinnamon gum freshens breath longer than Big Red.
So kiss a little longer, stay close a little longer, hold tight a little longer, longer with Big Red. That Big Red freshness lasts right through it. Your fresh breath goes on and on. While you chew it, say goodbye a little longer, make it last a little longer. Give your breath long-lasting freshness with Big Red.
Want to build a super day? Then start with the one great taste that makes a super bowl of cereal. Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Just think of crispy golden flakes.
Delicious, crunchy flakes of corn.
So pure and simple, just can't wait.
Low in sugar, loaded with vitamins and iron.
So good for you, don't hesitate.
For a super bowl of our most nutritious corn flakes ever.
What a Super Bowl! Have yourself a Super Bowl. Kellogg's Corn Flakes. Super taste, super good. Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
I loved it.
It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. All right, we're talking about Jedi and sexual preference in the previous segment here. And in this segment, I want to talk about the Sith and their issue with sexual identity as far as they're concerned. There really is no discussion on that part because Sith are selfish. Whatever they do for themselves and never for the benefit of anybody around them. And so they will use whatever means they can to achieve a goal, even through deception. But I haven't seen, how can I say, there's no mention in their dogma, anything at all about sexuality of any kind, okay? So I think it's like the last thing in their minds, primarily for, what they do. We never see any of the Sith Lords, as far as I know, attached to anybody. And if they were, I think that it would be people, with that rule of two, the master and the apprentice. And I think that in the situation with the Sith, if there was anybody attached, they would be seen as an adversary for the top tier of the Sith belief, which means whoever is second to them would eventually, the person would eventually try to overthrow the one at the top, which means there is no room for affection because the apprentice would always be expected to at some point overthrow the master. That keeps the Sith strong. So could anyone possibly hold on to some kind of a relationship like in a situation like that? I can't see how it's possible, honestly. Everything is an advancement up the ladder of the of the religion, if you want to call it that. They simply don't have room for anything other than themselves. Okay. You take a look at Palpatine himself, how he was going to kill his own granddaughter. Okay. We'll just take it at the familial affection that we understand. There wasn't any with him. Didn't matter. He killed his own family, and unless Rey was going to give in to him and be his second, he'd kill her too, which is what he tried to do. So we know that the Sith really don't have any regard for a deep affection for anything. And he tried to force Vader to kill his own son in that duel on the Death Star too. So again, another sign of where the Sith don't really have much regard for that kind of thing. As for affection for all things connected to the Force, again, the powers that they use, like Palpatine's Force lightning that he used against Luke, that draws directly from the life force itself, which you see used in that way is dangerous and destructive, which means they don't have much regard for the living force as what it is, okay? They will use it to manipulate whomever and whatever to its destructive ends. And by doing that, it just shows that they don't have that blanket respect for all living things like the Jedi do. And so they will sacrifice a living person, which is an aspect of the Force, in order to make themselves stronger or to achieve a goal. And so killing isn't alien to them. They will do it without hesitation. And so a Jedi that has respect for all living things is going to find it very difficult to kill another person. They're always, even if it's a Sith, it's not an easy thing for them to do, which I think is why, you know, Obi-Wan found it so difficult to kill Anakin, because you see he had an attachment to Anakin that prevented him from going all the way. I mean, yes, he left him on Mustafar to burn and die, but he wasn't going to be the final stroke in that way. I mean, he understood that perhaps maybe the Force wanted it to happen, so if the Force wanted him dead, then the Force would do it itself, right? Basically, he wasn't going to be the instrument of that. So in a way, that was his kind of defiance of the Jedi Order by not finishing Anakin off. But as we find out in Star Wars Obi-Wan, that was also another mistake that he made that came back to bite him in the ass, because Vader returned and you got to see what the end result of his sparing of Anakin turned out to be, and it just made Anakin even worse. And so he was so sorrowful about that he, you know, so you see there is a reason for why so many, you know, the Jedi have to follow these kind of dogmatic rules here about how they deal with the Force, because if you don't do what it wants, or if you are not in tune with it, you make things worse without realizing it. And I think for Obi-Wan, who wasn't completely understanding of Qui-Gon Jinn's teachings about the Force, he found himself unable to stick to Qui-Gon's teachings in that situation, because, you know, Anakin and him had shared a lot of adventures, a lot of life and death situations, and of course he taught him against the wishes of Yoda, and they became friends. You know, they were that way. Of course, Obi-Wan always saw the problem Anakin had with controlling his anger and stuff, but you know, he depended on him for a lot of times, and they worked together well, I suppose. But with the Sith, like I said, there is no friendship, there is no love, there is nothing of that crap. I mean, it's just, to them, it's all for me, and the rest of the galaxy can go to hell, you know, as long as I'm sitting on the top. And so you can't even have that discussion about sexual identity about the Sith, because they certainly don't think anything of it, except perhaps to use it as a tool to gain an upper hand on somebody or whatever, you know. So I think it's when people in the fandom, the Star Wars fandom, bring up social issues in the real world and try to apply it into the world of fantasy, science fiction, there's going to be issues that are going to create problems with that, because when you're dealing with religious points in a story, modern rules, the reality rules of different religions today simply don't apply, because you're creating a religion that's Lucas was trying to create a religion that was separate from anything that we're familiar with in the real world. okay? And I mean, it would have been different if they'd have created a science fiction fantasy kind of story that dealt with religions that we're familiar with, or based on something we're familiar with. But the Jedi are nothing unlike anything that we've ever seen in cinematic history, was because their religion gives them powers, or abilities rather, to do things. And so much of it hinges, how well they do these things hinges so much on how they believe what they are, how they believe themselves to be in relation to being in the Force, and how they view the world around them, outside the council, the temple. And in order for that religion to function, you have to have a certain understanding of how people really are, how they grow up, how they live their lives. And you have to understand, when it's appropriate to try and do something to, if you figure somebody has an ability with the Force that they're going to be able to control it, and when is the best time to get somebody into the teachings of it, and do these things. And so, it's not like any religion you ever hear of today. I mean, they don't do stuff like that, and as far as I know, in most cultures, by taking somebody from birth, to integrate them into a religion, unless the parents or whoever, the guardians, actually, leave the kid at the doorstep of somebody. It's not really done that way. So when you're looking at people that are Jedi and Sith and stuff like that, and you're creating a religion that centers around a unseeable energy field out there that surrounds and penetrates everybody and every living thing, and to be able to manipulate that is a very dangerous, but dangerous, I would say, dangerous, powerful way, okay? And it has to be treated respectfully, and you have to be able to do it safely. And for those people who have a tendency to be aggressive and stuff like that, if they can't control it, they become a danger. They don't really say what happens to a lot of these Jedi that don't finish the program to be a Jedi and are deemed unsafe to continue. I mean, do they just cast them out? Because what happens is, if you cast these people out, then wouldn't the Sith or the dark side of the Force find them as tools, basically, to turn them into dark Jedi or dark or Sith Lords or whatever? Do you think that's probably what happens? I mean, I think it does. I mean, the Jedi just can't really let people out who've been trained, in the Jedi ways, and then expected not to use them because they couldn't pass the Jedi teaching, the tests and stuff like that. You can't just do that. So I don't know. I mean, there's that question that's always been on my mind about when they talk about fallen Jedi and stuff like that. I mean, it's like, well, Count Dooku would be considered a fallen Jedi, and look what happened to him. Okay, he turned to the dark side. Maybe not willingly, but through steps. After 10 years, he did. So anyway, I digress here, but what I'm saying is that what I started off talking about was sexual identity in Star Wars, with concerns to the Jedi, and in my view also the Sith. And like I said, I don't think there's any room for discussion there on the Sith side, because of how they are with their beliefs. But I do think that Jedi do not identify with sexual identity. Okay, they are just considered handmaidens of the Force, for a lack of a better word, that they're supposed to do the Force's willing, and so they submit themselves to what the Force wants, or at least that's what they should have been doing when we first see, the Jedi Council, like in Episode 1. As we saw, the Council was not following the will of the Force, which Qui-Gon was warning them about, and they felt they knew better, and it backfired on them, okay? So they have to do the will of the Force, which means if the Force doesn't want you to have relations with other people because you're an instrument of the Force, then you cannot consider yourself straight, gay, homeless, you know what I'm saying? You can't consider yourself anything like that. There's no room for that. And so when you have this problem of people today trying to understand where they stand on that thing, they're not really seeing the whole religion, if you will, the whole dogmatic world of the Jedi as a whole. You have to understand that before you can even ask questions like that. Okay, so that's it for right now. I know this is a short video, but I just want to bring this out, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the week. So I will talk to you later, and keep your eyes and ears open to COVID-19 news. I'll talk to you later.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We are not sending out interceptors. We have taken them completely by surprise.
Because I think that the tradition of an engineer is a strut, because all the great motor ships and the steamships of the world were built in the Clyde.